getting to topic number one. As we know, the next generation has officially arrived in a big way. Now, for some, it has been a flawless transition in the form of Xbox One and PlayStation 4 being left behind. For others, though, not so much. Now, the topic at hand concerns one that we have talked about in delirium, if you will, on this program, and it involves Halo Infinite. And, you know, the Master Chief is no stranger to both a positive and negative discussion when needed. Though this conversation is going to be much very different than many before it, and may actually upset some listeners who are not looking towards the new Xbox consoles for the Series X and S. And one of the most debated topics in recent months, and as a matter of fact, we were just talking about it moments ago, is if Sony and, more importantly, Xbox should make full use of the next generation hardware. And what I mean by that is making the next gen games exclusive for the new consoles. And it really is a point of contention and discussion because of what's going on with Cyberpunk. Now, Cyberpunk 2077 is a game that had 8 million pre-orders. Folks, I understand what I just said. 8 million pre-orders. Okay, that is incredible. And unfortunately, what's happening is many people are going out and dropping their $60, $70, $80, $90, or even $300 on a collector's edition to bring this game home with excited anticipation and are being disappointed at every turn. And why do you think this is? Well, listen, I'm not a developer, so I honestly don't know. But if these games were made for next gen only, would these games still have these bugs? Again, that's a question that we are going to debate, and whether or not that we believe that in fact is true. So look, the truth of the matter is this: Microsoft delayed Halo Infinite until holiday of 2021, which gives 343 Industries and whoever else has teamed up with them from inside one of Microsoft's 23 first-party studios to make this game a masterpiece. They have 11 and a half months or 11 months to get this to be the Halo Infinite that I know that it's going to be. I literally have no doubt that this is going to be epic. I really do. I really feel in my heart of hearts we're all going to look back on this show and many shows before and say, you know what? Boom was right. There wasn't anything to worry about. And that's how I honestly feel. Though that is not the main crux of the conversation. The main crux of the conversation is taking what is happening in mainstream media today, seeing that Cyberpunk is literally running to the point of molasses on the vanilla PlayStation 4s, PlayStation 4 Pros, Xbox Ones, and Xbox One X consoles. For crying out loud, Joe has just told you that it's not even running good on his PlayStation 5. So the question is, does Microsoft and, more importantly, 343 Industries need to take a real strong stance and look at what is currently going on and cancel the old generation version of Halo? That is the question. Now, Mr. Babbitt, I want to go to you first on this because you are one of our biggest Halo fans outside of myself. And we don't know if ProjectX-Cloud is going to be on consoles that could logistically do the heavy lifting for the game. So we don't know that. Now, if it is, well, then it's not even worth it. Now this conversation is completely out the window, but we have to assume that it's not going to be. Plus, more importantly, if you want ray tracing, if you want VRS, if you want all of the bells and whistles you're getting on these new consoles, well, you got to buy the new consoles. So my question to you is, and being fair-minded, does 343 Industries truly need to be very precise on their decision on whether or not they should cancel the old generation version of Halo Infinite and focus solely on next generation?
It's a great question. And it's also, I'd put my Sony hat on of what they said and lied about, 8 months ago, of just like, we believe in generations, that taking that hard stance. And then finding out, I mean, for me, I've known this, Horizon was going to be a PS4 game at the start. It was not planned to be a PS5 game. So now that being a PS4, PS5 game, I'm being yelled at downstairs. One sec, guys. Yeah, go to
Yeah. You know what? Let's go to Archimedes on this. Archimedes, you and I have been talking privately in the DM for a bit, and we are kind of, I believe, on the same page on this. What are your thoughts on this? Because obviously, again, it's weird with CD Projekt Red's Cyberpunk. There are some people like Zemi who are not reporting the same problems that Joe's having. There are friends of mine that are reporting unbelievable amounts of problems. And my brother Dan is 50 hours into it, and he is, he's had some bugs, but he's not reporting the same amount of craziness.
Yeah.
What do you think about this? I mean, does 343 kind of have to look at this maybe a little different than maybe their stance before?
It's a complex question. The short answer is, I think they should not release a Halo on the old consoles, and but there's a lot to it. Let me start a little, because Joe started this discussion about cross-gen, and PlayStation said it, and Xbox said it, and they want to have it. And I think every game that is released this year should be cross-gen. That is just for multiple reasons. The first is, even if you want to transition to the new consoles, you can't. You can't buy them right now. So leaving a lot of gamers out in the rain now, just because scalpers took the opportunity to buy the consoles, or Microsoft or Sony didn't or are not able to manufacture enough consoles, is something we have to consider when we talk about this. People just can't buy the consoles right now. So games like Assassin's Creed Valhalla or now Cyberpunk, if they would come out only on the new consoles, only a handful of gamers would be able to play them. And that's definitely the beauty of cross-gen. And I think it makes sense in the beginning of a console generation. Now, if we look at Cyberpunk as an example for that, that game really is ambitious. It does so many things, and it's not just about the graphics. It's about level design. I touched on it earlier a little bit, the verticality. But there's even more to it. There's a lot of simulation going on in the game. It's really ambitious, because you can make a ton of decisions that affect the world. And I'm not just saying that there is a choice to do either A or B in the main mission. Even if you do side missions, they affect your main story. Yeah, I did a completely optional side mission where I accidentally killed off one of the main characters from the main story, and that character is now not there anymore. So it branches off in possible directions, and this just shows you how ambitious that is, and that takes a lot of computational resources. And I think this is where the problems come in for CD Projekt Red right now on the old consoles. Their game is just so ambitious that they will have problems making that game run on the old consoles. The problems that Joe was reporting on his PlayStation 5s, those are bugs. Those can be fixed. But I think the problem on the old consoles goes deeper. It's not just that they have glitches or crashes or stuff. That game runs in like with 10 or 12 frames per second. That is so super low. And they have had 7 years to develop that game. They know that the hardware, the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, inside out. And still were not able to make it run better than 12 frames per second. So you have to really ask, is it just a too ambitious game? And the same goes for Halo. We have seen it. It is of a huge scope. It does a lot of things that have never been done in a Halo game. It's not a corridor shooter anymore. It's an open world, side quests. A lot of things happening there. And you touched on it. There are stuff like ray tracing and those kind of visuals that, yeah, those can be scaled, but there are other things, gameplay mechanic things that cannot be scaled. And now, if we move forward 1 year, like November next year, this is probably when Halo will come out.
Yes.
Yeah, we have to ask ourselves. For us, it will feel like the current generation, the Series X generation and PlayStation 5 generation, goes on like forever. It will feel, right now we are all in this honeymoon phase with the new consoles, yeah? But in a year, we are all used to them. And you can buy the new consoles, yeah? You can just go in a shop in the US, in Best Buy or wherever, GameStop, walk in and buy a new console if you want to. So the question then really becomes, is it okay for Microsoft to spend a lot of resources now making an ambitious game run on super old hardware? Because let's remember, 2013, when the consoles came out, PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, they were nowhere near as powerful as the current generation consoles are. They were already outdated.
Yes,
they were low to mid-tier PCs in 2013. So this is really old hardware, and I'm not saying I can't guesstimate the ambition of Halo Infinite, but from all we have heard, it is an ambitious game, and now we see that this game really needs polish. That's why we haven't been able to play it yet. Yeah, that's why they delayed it, and now they spend a huge part of their team and a lot of time and money on making a game that is ambitious, run on this old hardware. I don't think that this is the best thing. If they take the same resources and make the experience even greater on the new generation of consoles, I think the game itself will benefit from it. And in 1 year, eventually gamers will have to make the shift. We can't do that cross-generation all the time. We can do it right now, like I said, in the first couple of months of a generation, but after a year, you have to come to this point where you just cut the old generation loose and not hold game design. I'm not talking graphics, I'm talking game design, gameplay mechanics, simulations, physics, stuff like that. You can't hold game development back like that. And that's why
I'm sorry. So you finish your point.
Yeah, and that's really why I would hope that they cut it loose. It is not like, if we are talking about the Xbox ecosystem, it's not like you have don't have enough options. Yeah, you can stream Halo via xCloud if you really can't afford it. The streaming app is out on the Android. It comes to PC. It comes to smart TVs by next year. Yeah, you can play it on your smart TV via streaming if you really don't have the money to invest in it. There's always the option of the super cheap Series S, and I make a bet right here that next holiday you will be able to get the Series X in a sale, Black Friday sale or whatever, for $249.
You know what's funny? You should say that. I actually have it on good authority, and again, I don't reveal sources, so folks just bear with me. That next year, for the release of Halo Infinite with a special edition console, which I believe we're going to get both versions. We're going to get the S version and the X version. I have it on good authority that they're going to drop the price. I can't say for the X, but I know for the S for sure, it is going to go to $250. And that is pretty incredible. At that point, it will be cheaper than an Xbox One X had ever been. I think the cheapest was $300.
Yeah. Yeah, it's same in euros here across Europe. Yeah. So I get that money is definitely an issue to move over, but eventually you will have to do it. Those old consoles can't be supported forever. Yeah. I think Xbox makes it more easy to transition over to next gen gameplay than ever before with xCloud, with the Series S as an entry point. And eventually we have to do it and can't hold the game development back. And just think about how many people at 343 will have to work on those old gen versions, making them run on that really old hardware of the Xbox One base console, not even the One S, the base console. It is take those resources and make the experience as good as possible, and then you have finally your game that brings people over from the old generation. It's a system seller. Halo is a system seller.
I'm
Make
actually
it
on
so.
the exact opposite side of the fence here.
Okay, then
I,
shoot.
I think you absolutely need what Halo needs more than anything, because it's going to sell a system no matter what. It needs an audience, and you can't do that. I mean, we saw it with like games like Titanfall that tried to do it a few months as the consoles were coming out. You know, you can't do that a year in and have that steady base there. You know, I would like to think that Cyberpunk is kind of the exception to the rule, in terms of how to scale the game. You know, I think just because Cyberpunk came out unplayable on base consoles, I don't think that is a testament to, oh, this hardware is old. They were making this game for 8 years. You know, they're like even they said it, like they don't have a next gen version. This is the version they plan to have out. They don't have it in their hands. You know, we're playing the backwards compatible version on the of a PS4 on a PS5, yep. Right? So it really, like, when you take a look at like what the Switch can run, and sure, it's, you know, compromised in some ports, but like, you know, you got your Wolfenstein, you got your Doom, you got your Skyrim. And yeah, some of them, The Witcher.
The Witcher runs on the Switch.
Exactly. It may look like a potato, but it's the Witcher.
On the mobile screen, it doesn't look like a potato. It actually looks fine on the mobile screen.
Yeah, it's so like, for me, I don't view that old hardware equals new software going to be bad. I view it as, how are you scaling that tech? And is that tech made to be scalable? So, you know, I take a look at Fortnite as a great example of, like, look at that game. It could be played on a phone. It could be played on a tablet. It could be played on a Xbox. You could play it on a PlayStation, right? That game is incredibly scalable. So how do we scale the Halo Infinite? That's the true question, is how do we scale it? And I think we have to, as fans, level with ourselves and go, Halo isn't going to be, and please put the pitchforks down, it's not going to be that ambitious. It's going to be your first-person shooter fare, especially when it comes to the multiplayer. It needs to have those Halo roots. You know, I'm walking in for Halo not to change the world, but to be a really good Halo game. And I think that's where most people, if you've played Halo, you want a really good Halo experience. We've seen that you can do that with the Xbox One. The game's going to look great, right? Guardians looked great. And so really, I take a look at what PlayStation's done with Miles Morales. Like, that game runs really great on a PS5, looks really great on a PS5, and you can still show off the tech that is ray tracing, that is global illumination, and you could do the same on the Xbox with Halo. It's their most popular IP, and they need to make sure that it is supported by not just the dev side, but the audience side alike. You need as many boxes as you can so that millions of people play it on day one. So I really think the question is, and I think that's what they're working on right now, is how is this software scaling with Xbox to Series? That's a true question.
Pardon me for interrupting. The thing it really is here, what is scalable? Graphics are scalable. Your example from Miles Morales is a graphics example. Yeah, you add ray tracing, you add 60 frames, and there you go. You have your next gen experience. But the gameplay mechanics, are they different from the base Spider-Man game? Is there anything? There's nothing new to it, and that's my thing. We don't know
what can be. Like when we take a look at Halo, I mean, we can only tell with the single player, but it looks like it's an open world Halo game.
It's an open world Halo game. You don't know what they want to do with AI, with simulation of the environment and so on. I'm not saying that they will do it. I say the potential is there. And obviously the game is so ambitious that after 5 years of development time and a $500 million budget in the game, they still were not able to finish it. So there has to be some ambition to it. And the question really is now, where do you spend your resources on? Do you spend it to making it to run on this old console, where it will never fulfill the ambition, the vision you had for the game? Or do you just drop that and make it a super polished experience on the new hardware? And I get your multiplayer argument. You want the lobbies to be full. That's true. But they are doing that by making it free to play. Yeah, they are doing it by making it available via crossplay on PC, on Xbox console, Series consoles, and xCloud.
Well,
There
I mean,
are a ton of
Archimedes, at the end of the day, they've spent, $500 million, if I'm not mistaken, on this new engine. I mean, their ultimate goal with this game is to make money, right? Like that is their ultimate goal. At the end of the day, they are a business. They want to make money. And you are going to sell a lot more copies of that game if you put it on the Xbox One than if you make it only, this current new generation.
Sure. The money is the business side, obviously. Yeah, the bigger the possible install base, the bigger your possible income. I'm not worrying about the business side of Microsoft. I'm talking as a fan of games, and I want to have the best Halo experience. And I'm not sure if we will get that, if the old consoles will be still supported and at the end of 2021.
What I want to think
though,
Joe,
it's not I'm sorry.
Yeah, finish your point, Joe, and I'm going to get Zemi in. I want to hear what he has to say about this.
I don't think it's like let's take back ambition, the vision of this game. We don't know for sure what the true vision of. We have a glimpse of it, and I think so. Like when I take a look at like Miles Morales, it's a great game no matter if I'm playing on a PS4 or I'm playing it on a PS5. But I'll tell you, if you gave me the opportunity to play it on PS5, I'm going to. And it's not just because of, ray tracing or that skybox that looks beautiful. It's also some of the features that the PlayStation 5 has, like the haptic feedback, like the adaptive triggers, like Tempest Sound. Those are the things that are bringing me in. So if you could leverage the horsepower of the Series X to have something like ray tracing, like global illumination, like if you can have those things to make it a worthy enough experience to go, like for an Xbox One fan or someone that on the fence of going, okay, I could play it here, but damn, it looks nice on a Series X, so I'm gonna go out there and buy it. That's what I'm kind of looking towards it as. It's just like, I just want a Halo game. I don't want something that claims it's going to change the world. Like Doom is an amazing game because it is not out there to be anything but what a modern Doom game should feel like. And they nail it. And that game feels like Doom, whether you're playing it on a Switch, whether you're playing it on a PS4, or whether you're playing it on an Xbox One. They all feel like Doom. And I think that's what Halo needs. Is as long as it feels like Halo somewhere, it's great. And it does worry me. When we talk about crossplay, I don't want to play with PC players. They're going to kick my ass. Like that is not a fun time with me. So like I want to make sure that I have about as even ground with another person that's not using mouse and keyboard.
I mean, look, I'll say this. I'm gonna save my point for the last, because my point is I have to say this right out of the gate. It's on with Archimedes. I feel that there is a grand scope and scale for a new Halo that is supposed to be a rebranding or a rebirth of Master Chief. And again, real quick, a good friend of the show, the X Element, he says something pretty interesting in the chat. He goes, Gears 5 and Hivebusters proves that not only can Microsoft Studios deliver a proper cross-gen title, but their studios have really raised the bar in quality, in presentation, and gameplay. See, now I can't argue that point, but again, this is an open world Halo. This is not the same corridor-based Halo that we're all used to. This is, again, they have ambitions. They have, and some of those ambitious lines can't be crossed because of the bottleneck situation in the Xbox One X, as opposed to not having that line in the Series X and the S. And I think, again, I'm going to save my point because I want to hear Zemi, but I have to say that I think I'm siding here with Archimedes. But Zemi, listen, I know from a business point of view, which is where your mind works, it makes perfect sense. the more consoles you have to play Halo on, the more people are either going to A, buy the game, or B, subscribe to Game Pass. Makes total sense. Makes absolute sense. But from looking at the way that it was presented by Archimedes, he does bring up some very valid points about there potentially being some holdback as to how big this game is going to eventually be because of old hardware. What are your thoughts on this? Should Microsoft and or 343 Industries scrap the Xbox One S and X version of Halo?
Yeah, for me personally, I believe that the best course of action is for them to fully support last gen. Just as an example, first off, if you abandon last gen for this game, you are going to have a lot of fans and a lot of consumers who are in a COVID-ridden economy, quite possibly, who won't have the money to buy a next-gen console to play this game that they want to play. Furthermore, if there's any consoles available, and we also have to remember that Xbox has specifically came out and made the statement that they would support these next gen consoles going forward. At least I think 2-3 years was their statement, right? So if they go back on that, then they have done a huge lie to the consumers, and that is not good for their brand. That's not good for the image of Xbox. And for me personally, ultimately, I think it's really important, and I would like to see Xbox be the company that keeps its promises rather than destroys them, because things just got a little bit tough. From a monetary standpoint, I think it makes a lot of sense to publish this game on as many places, as many outlets as you can to maximize profits. They're in a lot of money with the development of this game. And I understand from some points where Archimedes is coming from, but we also have to remember this is the very beginning of this generation, and rarely do we see an absolutely mind-blowingly ambitious game come out at the very beginning of a generation, right? Like it's usually not.
We are talking next year. We're talking next year. The consoles will be out already for a year. Yes. It won't feel like the beginning of the generation anymore.
Okay, and I understand what you're saying, but that's a big if. We don't know what this game's going to have, technically, technical wise, right? You might be right, and it might not be able to be ran on a last gen console, but as they were building this game, the last gen consoles were out. They had an idea of when they were going to release it, and they knew what consoles they wanted to release it for. So I don't think that it is impossible to release this console or release this game on the last gen console. The way I look at it is Xbox has, even went as far to, to tell us that, their first party games will be built for next gen, but they will be able to be scaled down to last gen. Right? They have specifically said that. And we know that that type of thing is possible. We see it on PC right now, right? And if you can scale games for PC, depending on the hardware that you had on your personal computer, I don't see why you can't scale the game for console. And I understand like the ideas of, well, Cyberpunk's a really, really buggy game, but I'm definitely going to have to agree with Joe on this in the sense that, I don't think that that is a very good comparison to make to say, well, Cyberpunk was just way too ambitious for this old generation, because they literally created the game for this old generation. It's really just a matter of them not putting in, I guess, enough work. They probably realistically they should have delayed the game again. There's only so many delays that you could probably do until a publisher smacks down and says no, but they could have probably definitely done another for another delay. But I don't see any reason why Halo should not be published and put on the last gen. I mean, I understand your point, Archimedes, as far as from a technical standpoint, but that's if. And there's a great statement, or there's a great saying about if a frog had wings, it wouldn't bounce or it wouldn't bump its ass every time it took a step, right? That's as far
Oh.
as if can get you, right? We don't
I've never
know.
heard that in my life. What type of old saying is this?
Hey,
I mean,
hey,
you
it's
were
a
gonna
good
buy
one.
you?
It's,
What's going on here?
hey, it's a good one. That one's straight
It's
from
great.
Kentucky, I think. I don't know. But I think that that's true. We don't know, and until there's evidence to actually point towards them not putting this game on last or on of them not putting this game on last gen, I don't feel comfortable personally saying that they shouldn't do it. I think it makes more sense to do it than to not do it. You know, the amount of people that are going to be heartbroken and just angry if Xbox, you know, backpedals on this and says that they can't play this game. And by the way, you can't also buy a console because we don't have any for you to buy potentially next year. We don't know what the future holds, of course. You know, I just don't think that that's right. And I think it makes a lot more sense to publish it on last gen consoles than it does to only put it on the next gen consoles.
And just one more little quick point. I want everybody in the chat, all the Halo fans, look who's trying to fight for you, okay? The PlayStation guys, Emmy Games here. We're here. We were fighting the good fight. Everybody,
I
remember that.
I want to also comment just one or two short things here on Sammy's points. I get them. The thing is, the promise from Microsoft was to support the old consoles for the first year or two.
1 to 2 years is the exact
1 to 2
quote.
years. So we are in that range where they wouldn't break a promise technically. Because after 1 year,
would the fans look at it like that though? Technically,
well, you know what?
See what I'm saying?
I get that point, but I'm just saying, technically they wouldn't break a promise here. This is the first thing. The second thing is, again, they had 5 years already to make that game run. Something in that game is so ambitious or so complicated to make it run on the Xbox One, Xbox One S, Xbox One X, on the Series S, on the Series X, on xCloud, and on PC. Yeah, so that these huge resources are not enough to launch the game. And now it really comes down to this. Do you want a unpolished experience on the Series X and the Xbox One just because they had to focus a lot of use a lot of resources to make the game run on the old consoles? Or do you just want the best game possible on the next gen console? And I would say at one point, eventually we have to cut loose. This whole we support both the old and the new gen for years to come is just not good for the game development at some point. Eventually you will have to cut the old gen loose. And for the business side, I'm not sure moving people over to the new gen and with that bringing new subscribers to Game Pass is also a business strategy, even though if the overall player base might not be as high. I'm not sure here if that would turn out. And next year, we will be able to buy the consoles regularly. You can buy them online in every store everywhere. That won't be an issue next holiday. So yeah, eventually.
Look, I'll say this. I'm siding with Archimedes on this one. And listen, this is from someone that's for the people by the people, right? I'm all about, not leaving the little man behind. But there comes a point where your flagship title looked not that good. Again, I was okay with it, but it didn't look the way it was supposed to look. The question is, why is that? Why is Halo, a game that's $500 million investment, 5 years in development, not launching? Now, people are going to say, well, wait a second, Boom. I heard you say COVID. And I'll be the first one to say, yes, COVID started last year after the holidays is when it really kind of hit its stride. The game was in development for 4 years prior. So what happened to those 4 years? Here's the thing. The thing is this. We have new consoles. Microsoft, I know people are going to say, well, just people are hurting, Boom. People can't go out and buy systems. And I hear you. I'm not an animal. I understand the hardships. And trust me, I'm more aware of it than you realize at some points. But Microsoft has made it a business to offer the ability to upgrade your console in many formats. You can play on PC, you can play on xCloud, you can buy an Xbox Series X when they're available in the store, or you can buy an S. And if you don't want to buy it and you don't have that kind of money up front, you can use All Access and pay $25/$35 respectively, and you get Game Pass, and you get xCloud, and you get Xbox Live. So now I want to move this conversation to the technical aspect. The problem is Halo Infinite, again, is not your regular Halo. It is not what we know and love. It's going to have elements, sure. It's going to have the Master Chief. It's going to have the Banished and the Flood potentially, and of course the Elites and everything else that, you know, every bad guy you could throw in under the sun is going to be there for you. All the Warthogs and vehicles you want to drive are going to be there for you to experience as a Halo fan and enjoy. The problem is exactly what Archimedes is saying. There is something technically going on with this game that we don't know about yet, but they know, and they're having a difficult time getting that technical issue fixed to run on the old consoles.
Question: How many Xbox estimate? Because I know there's not like an official number.
It's like 50 million. Let's just say
50 million.
Mhm.
So okay, all right. Because my one thing is like to the casual consumer. That hurts if in less than a year your hardware is already unsupported.
I mean, here's my question though. Like, I know that you guys are saying that there's something technical going on with this game that makes it so ambitious that it couldn't run on last gen consoles. But where's the evidence of that? Where is the proof? Because there is none that I'm seeing.
well,
right now.
there's no proof that we know about. But why is the game delayed?
I mean, there's countless reasons why it could be delayed. You know, like
Right.
somebody in the office scheduling people could have took a nap. We don't know, right? I mean,
nap.
That's a little facetious. I understand, but there are other things that could affect game development other than there just being this brand new, extremely technical demanding feature that is not going to be able to be played on you know the last gen consoles.
It's
right?
like what happens when
it
it grapples a
doesn't
certain rock, it breaks the game. Like
You know,
No,
for
it does not have to be a
ambitious
super
thing, no.
technical feature. You are right, Sammy. This
potentially
doesn't have to be the
changed
case.
The direction of the game that they wanted to. They learned that some of the assets that they were using weren't going to work, so they had to change it around.
Yeah,
But again, that's the
you have
point.
7 platforms you have to publish the game on. If you take 3 of these platforms, the 3 weakest platforms, out of the equation, you definitely have to spend less time optimizing an old hardware that will have trouble running this game. And
But
this
isn't
is just a question about resources. It doesn't
Right,
have to
but I
be
mean-
only about technical features.
I mean, first, I mean, they're a $1 trillion company, but like, secondly, didn't they say, you know, didn't they say like the Xbox One architecture and the Xbox Series architecture are very similar, and that this thing is going to be even easier than ever to code for or to scale up and down from? So like, I don't know if I necessarily buy that there's something super ambitious. Again, like when we take a look at Fortnite is an incredibly ambitious game when you really get into the weeds of things, of what that game's able to achieve in those games, like with all the live events and whatnot. That game's being run on a Galaxy phone, right?
Yeah,
So
here's also the problem. You see, the one thing that I have a big problem with is the suggestion that 50 million people are playing Halo. The answer is that is not even factually true. 10% of that 50 million are playing Halo. Okay, I mean, we have to call a spade a spade.
But
This
10% of 50 million is a lot more than 10% of 2 million.
Yeah, but you are assuming that the game is out today. That's the problem. You have to remove yourself from that equation and talk about a game that's coming out a year from today.
But are we saying that, like, well, first, I think it's going to be a little bit more than like 5%. I think so. Like, if we take even just like, we'll play with that number. Are we telling those 5 million people, all right, buck up, shut up, give us this cash? Because like the one thing that I do agree with you, Boom, to a certain extent, is that when this game comes out, it's not going to have the Miles Morales effect, because Miles Morales came out a year ago. This might get a little bit more scrutinized as to like, all right, is this just like an Xbox One game just scaled up to some folks out there? Like, that's going to be analyzed. You could bet your ass like Digital Foundry's going to do something crazy with it.
Yeah.
So I understand what you're saying here is of it should break the boundaries, but Xbox isn't really about that. They are about, like, again, like Xbox Series X is cool. You don't need it right now, though. Just be a part of our ecosystem. And I think giving those people choice, and I think that's the main thing about Xbox, is giving players choice and giving people time to upgrade or not. I think that's important, you know?
Yeah, but how long do you want to support that? Because let's
They said
look
1
at
to 2 years.
Yeah,
2
one,
years.
one to two.
Yeah,
years
but in 2
solid.
years a game comes out. Let's say Fable, holiday 2020. We have a Fable release. You got 2 years. Should that game come out on the old consoles?
Absolutely
Because you don't want
not.
to cut someone loose. And eventually, you have to, as a gamer, you have to invest in new hardware, whether it's this year, next year, or in 2 years.
I'm not
So,
saying that, but
and Xbox
there-
is making
there's a delicate-
one thing. They are extending the cheapest way to play next gen games significantly next year. They have said so. The xCloud app will come to smart TVs. It will come to PC. So all you need is a TV or a PC monitor. You don't have to have a capable PC. You just have to have the monitor and a controller, and that's it. And then you can play the game. That's your choice. It's cheaper
I see where you're coming from.
than anything.
I see where you're coming from.
Yeah,
But,
Joe, let me just add this also to the conversation. See, here's the problem. You know, I want to bring PC into the conversation because you see, if you have a current PC that can't run an X game because your hardware isn't up to snuff and it's going to run the game the absolute worst possible, what do? You go out and you buy a new piece of hardware to play X game. I think that's the same argument, even though it's juvenile, if you will, could be said for, well, Halo Infinite is the rebirth of the Master Chief. We have new consoles; they've been out a year already, and the actual game, is going to be hurt by technical issues running on old bottlenecked hardware that was old hardware before the consoles launched in 2013, but somehow in 2021, 8 years later, we're okay with that. I am not okay with that. I want the best experience for Halo, and I'm going to have it because I invested in my hobby.
I think, and the last point I'll make is, like, when we're talking about like Fable or whatever, like, I'm thinking of it as a PlayStation fan. Again, I am kind of born again in this idea of like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, the whole like generation, locking behind generations. Yeah, I get it. I think it has to be a case by case thing where, like, for example, when you take a look at the PlayStation 5 lineup, some games will be solely a PlayStation 5 game. Some games will be a cross-gen of both. Some of them, because they're using or utilizing that next-gen tech, is the reason why it can't be played on. And the other reason is because some of those franchises are too big to take the loss on. And so when I take a look at games like Returnal, games like Ratchet, I get it. Those are PlayStation 5 exclusives. But then I also understand, like, for Horizon Zero Dawn, yes, there are those folks out there where you do have to also realize you still have this install base that you have to at least attempt to kind of respect and wean them off that console, but not make it so that you're pulling the rug from under them, right? So, like, the reason for you being a fan of that Xbox ecosystem, or feel like your dollar is being valued, is, let's just say you don't have $500 to go spend on a console, because console market different than PC. So you take a look at that, you're like, I don't have it right now, but I'm taking a look at Fable. That's looking great. So maybe Fable's the game that I pull the trigger on. You have to wean them off, and it has to feel natural to the consumer, or else they're going to feel gypped off. And there's this very delicate balance between the two that you have to pull off. So again, like, I'm with you guys. I understand where you guys are coming from, because I don't want the stories of like, well, this is an Xbox One game, but at the same exact time, I am thinking about that Xbox One customer. But
I just think that with the first party games, regardless of, and Nintendo's the exception to the rule here. They're the ones that get 1-to-1 ratios. Like Breath of the Wild is literally in everyone's household, sometimes twice. So that they're a removal from the conversation. But when you look at something like perfect example, PlayStation. Their best-selling game is Spider-Man. There's no doubts about it. But they're upwards of 112, 114 million consoles. They sold 20 million copies. So they're still, only a fourth of the populace that bought this game. That could be said for Halo as well. So if you're saying that 50 million,
let's take that. So there's 20 million people. How many of them? There's 20 million people, 20 million fans, 20 million consumers, whatever the case may be. And you're telling them, and let's just say it's the same for Halo because it was their biggest IP, right? And you're saying to those 20 million, all right, we said it was on Xbox One. It's not anymore. So
well, they have to explain.
Just to add in, I think that is also a very, very important example. Like, I agree with you, Boom, and you, Archimedes, as far as the line goes of there will come a point, a critical moment where, they will not be able to put these newer Xbox, games on the old hardware. And I agree with that 100%. But, Archimedes mentioned Fable. I don't think Fable has actually even been said what consoles it's going to be played on, but Halo has. And they said the Xbox One consoles and the Series consoles.
Well, things can change, though.
Pull back from that, and you just lied to your consumers.
You didn't lie. You come out and you explain why this has to be.
They said the Halo will launch this November along with the console on Xbox One and Xbox Series X. Now they said, okay, we cannot publish it this year. We have to move it to next year. People. So this is also not a lie. It's a change of things. Things happen, and you could also tell, okay, listen, guys, the game won't be able to run on the old consoles in a way that we feel that you deliver the Halo experience we envisioned for the game. But you have those options. You can stream it to your smart TV. Probably your Xbox One console will have an X-Cloud app. I mean, if they put that X-Cloud app on the Samsung TV, you will have it on the Xbox One. You can stream it to your PC, or you can buy the cheapest console ever, the Series S or your Series X. You have the option. I think in the end, eventually everyone will have to make the move. You do it with your phones as well. Nobody complains that he has to buy every 2 year or every 3 year a new phone simply because your apps won't run anymore.
But that's a gradual thing, right? Like, that's something that is gradual. I don't even think phones are 1-to-1 on that. Like, I definitely think there has to be a gradual thing and not just like, well, we said it and well, things happen.
Well, I mean, obviously when they started talking about Halo Infinite, it was what, last year, right? So now
I think they showed it off
2018.
Yeah, 2018. Like there's a presumption that
you're talking about when it finally releases, a 3-year gap from initial, we're showing you what the game is going to potentially look like, to the game releasing. Well, that overextends past the 1 to 2 years. We're going to support this console.
Right.
Again, listen, folks. I don't.
We had a good talk.
Listen. We could probably go another hour on this subject, and I don't think we are going to agree. I think that it's 50% for keeping it on the old consoles, 50% keeping it on the new consoles, and you know something, that's perfectly fine. I do want to.